The sandstorm hit the crimson wastes just after sunset, turning the sky into a wall of red dust and screaming wind. Taewon was inside his small repair station when his warning system started going crazy. Every screen in his workshop lit up at once, showing readings that made no sense at all. Something big had just crashed into the desert. Taewon ran to his main console and stared at the numbers. The crash site was 30 kilometers away, right in the middle of the worst part of the storm. The energy readings were impossible. His instruments were designed to detect mining equipment and small ships, but this signature was off every chart he had. Whatever crashed out there was using power levels that could run his entire station for a year. He should have stayed inside. That was the smart choice. The storm would last for hours, maybe days. Going out there was stupid and dangerous. But Taewon had been a military engineer before he came to this desert planet, and old habits were hard to break. If someone was hurt out there, they needed help. If it was just cargo, well, salvage rights meant he could sell whatever survived the crash. Taewon pulled on his environment suit and loaded his rover with tools. The suit was old, patched in a dozen places, but it still worked. The rover was even older, a mining vehicle he had rebuilt 3 times. It ran on spare parts and luck, but it had never failed him before. He checked his oxygen levels, grabbed extra water, and headed into the storm. The desert fought him every meter of the way. Sand blasted against his rover's windshield so hard he could barely see. The wind pushed the vehicle sideways, and twice he nearly flipped over. His navigation system kept cutting out because of interference from whatever crashed. Taewon drove by instinct and experience, following the energy readings on his handheld scanner. After 2 hours of fighting through the storm, he found it. The ship was massive, half buried in a sand dune. But calling it a ship felt wrong. It looked alive somehow. The hull was made of metal, but the metal seemed to breathe. Crystalline structures ran along its surface, glowing with soft blue and purple light. The design was organic, flowing. Nothing like the square and practical human ships Taewon knew. This was art and engineering mixed together in ways that should not be possible. Taewon parked his rover and approached carefully. His scanner was screaming warnings about radiation and unknown energy types. He should have turned around right then. This was clearly alien technology, way beyond anything humans had built. Touching it could be dangerous or even deadly. But then he saw the life support readings and his heart sank. Someone was still inside. The ship's system showed a single life form in some kind of stasis chamber, but the power core was failing fast. Taewon did quick calculations in his head and felt sick. The core would go critical in less than 6 hours. When that happened, the explosion would vaporize everything within a kilometer. He had to work fast. Taewon circled the ship looking for an access point. The hull was seamless, no visible doors or hatches. He tried knocking, which felt stupid, but he was running out of ideas. To his surprise, a section of the hull rippled like water and opened. The ship was responding to him somehow, recognizing that he was trying to help. Inside was even more beautiful and strange than the outside. The corridors glowed with their own light. Control panels were made of crystal and metal that shifted when he touched them. Everything hummed with power, but it was fading. The ship was dying, and Taewon could feel it. He found the power core in the center of the ship. It was a sphere of contained energy, floating in a magnetic field, pulsing like a heart. But the pulse was irregular, weakening. The containment field had cracks in it, and exotic matter was leaking out. Taewon had never seen technology like this before, but he understood the basics. The core was losing stability, and when it failed completely, it would explode. Taewon ran back to his rover and grabbed every tool and piece of equipment he had. He worked like a man possessed, barely stopping to breathe. The alien systems did not match anything he knew, but engineering was engineering. Energy had to flow somewhere. Containment fields needed power. Cooling systems needed circulation. He started talking to himself, a habit from years of working alone. Okay, so you're losing power because the containment field is failing. The field needs more energy, but the core can't provide it because it's already unstable. Classic feedback loop. I need to stabilize you from outside. Taewon ran cables from his rover's power cells to the ship's systems. It should not have worked. Human technology and alien technology should not be compatible, but Taewon made it work through sheer stubbornness and creative thinking. He bypassed safety systems, rerouted power flows, and forced the alien ship to accept energy from his primitive human equipment. I know, this is garbage compared to what you're used to," he muttered while working. "But garbage is better than exploding. Trust me on this." The ship seemed to respond to his voice, or maybe he was just imagining it. The systems became a bit easier to work with, as if the ship understood he was trying to help. With 3 hours left, Taewon tackled the cooling system. The core was overheating, adding to the instability. He needed to cool it down fast. His rover had a climate control system for the cabin. It was designed to keep one person comfortable in desert heat. Using it to cool an alien power core was insane. Taewon ripped the cooling unit out of his rover and carried it inside the ship. He adapted the connections using copper wire and sheer determination. The alien systems fought him at first, rejecting his makeshift repairs. But slowly, carefully, he made them accept his help. "Come on, work with me here," he said, sweat dripping down his face inside his suit. "I'm trying to save your life. Our lives. Everyone's lives, really." With 1 hour left, the core was still critical but slightly more stable. Taewon made 17 more adjustments, each one more desperate than the last. He used parts from his rover, his tools, even pieces of his own suit when he ran out of options. Any engineer from the military would have called him insane. What he was doing violated every safety regulation ever written, but it worked. With 43 seconds left before critical failure, the power core stabilized. The pulsing became steady and strong. The containment field sealed its cracks. The ship's systems came back online one by one, and the dying hum became a healthy throb of power. Taewon collapsed against the nearest wall, exhausted beyond words. His hands were shaking. His suit was ruined. His rover would probably never run again, but he had done it. He had saved the ship and whoever was inside it. The ship seemed to hum gratefully, and Taewon laughed, slightly hysterical from stress and relief. Then he heard a sound that made him freeze. Somewhere deeper in the ship, a machine was activating. The stasis chamber was opening. Whoever he had saved was waking up. Taewon pulled himself to his feet and walked toward the sound. His legs felt like rubber, but he kept going. He turned a corner and entered a large chamber at the heart of the ship. In the center was a tall crystalline pod, and it was opening slowly, releasing cold mist into the air. A figure stepped out of the mist, and Taewon forgot how to breathe. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with scales that shimmered like molten gold and copper. Her eyes were amber with vertical slits like a cat's. Small horns curved back from her temples, and wing-like membranes folded against her back. She was alien, powerful, and absolutely beautiful in a way that was both frightening and amazing. She looked at him with those burning amber eyes, and Taewon realized he might have saved someone far more important and dangerous than he ever imagined. The alien woman stood perfectly still for a long moment, studying Taewon with those unsettling amber eyes. She was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Her scales caught the light from the ship's systems, making her seem to glow. When she moved, it was with perfect grace, like a predator deciding whether something was prey or not worth her time. Taewon expected her to be confused or scared after coming out of stasis. Instead, she looked completely calm and in control. She examined her surroundings, then looked down at herself, checking for injuries. Finding none, she turned her full attention back to Taewon. When she spoke, her voice was deep and musical, with harmonics that seemed to vibrate in his chest. But Taewon could not understand a single word. The language was complex, full of sounds no human throat could make. She paused, then touched a crystal bracelet on her wrist. The bracelet glowed, and when she spoke again, Taewon could understand her. "You are the one who repaired my vessel." Her tone suggested she found this fact surprising and possibly amusing. Taewon was still tired, still covered in grease and sweat, and his brain was running on empty after hours of desperate work. So instead of being properly respectful or afraid, he just nodded. "Yeah, that was me. Your power core was about to explode. Fixed it with some copper wire and a cooling unit from my rover." He paused, then added, "That'll be 50,000 credits for parts and labor." The woman stared at him like he had just said something in a language even her translator could not handle. Her scaled eyebrows rose slowly, and her mouth opened slightly in what might have been shock. Taewon realized that maybe he should have been more polite. This woman radiated power and authority. She was clearly someone important. Asking her for money right after saving her life was probably not the smart move. "I mean, we can discuss payment later," he added quickly. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" The woman closed her mouth and studied him with new interest. Then, to his complete surprise, she laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound that echoed through the chamber. "No one has spoken to me so casually in 300 years. she said, sounding delighted. You have no idea who I am, do you? Someone who crashed in the desert and nearly blew up? Taewon suggested. She laughed again, then straightened to her full height. When she spoke next, her voice carried weight and power that made Taewon's survival instincts scream warnings. I am Hirin, Queen of the Outer Reaches, commander of the Third Fleet, and heir to the dragon throne of the Yongari Empire. My people have ruled 17 galaxies since before your species discovered fire. Taewon processed this information slowly. He had just asked royalty for 50,000 credits like she was a customer at his repair shop. He had told a queen that her ship ran on garbage from his rover. He had definitely made some poor life choices in the last few hours. So, should I bow or something? He asked weakly. Hirin's eyes sparkled with amusement. Too late for that now. You have already established the tone of our relationship. She walked past him, moving deeper into her ship to check the systems. Show me what you did to stabilize my core. I need to understand how a primitive species managed to interface with Yongari technology. Taewon followed her, trying not to feel insulted by the word primitive. She was not wrong, really. Human technology was basic compared to what her ship could do. But primitive still stung a bit. He walked her through his repairs, explaining each modification and bypass he had made. Hirin listened carefully, occasionally stopping to examine his work more closely. Her expression shifted from amused to surprised to something that looked like respect. This should not have worked, she said finally, touching one of his improvised power connections. Your technology operates on completely different principles than ours. The energy frequencies do not match. The quantum states are incompatible. She turned to look at him. Yet somehow you forced them to work together. I'm good at making things work that shouldn't, Taewon said with a shrug. It's kind of my specialty. Hirin continued her inspection, and her amusement faded into something more serious. My ship was shot down, she said quietly. Assassins from a rival clan ambushed me during a diplomatic mission. I was traveling alone in secret, which was clearly a mistake. Assassins? Taewon felt his stomach drop. Are they coming back? Yes, they will return to confirm the kill. My ship's emergency beacon was damaged in the crash, so my fleet does not know where I am. She examined a control panel, her face grim. I estimate we have 3 days before the assassins return. The ship needs extensive repairs before it can jump to hyperspace again. Taewon thought about his small station, alone in the desert. My place is the only shelter for hundreds of kilometers. You're stuck here until your ship is ready. And you are stuck with me, Hirin said, turning to face him. When the assassins return, they will kill any witnesses. I am sorry, human. By saving my life, you have put your own in danger. Taewon wanted to panic. He wanted to run. But he had been in bad situations before, during his military service. Panic never helped. He took a deep breath and thought it through logically. Okay, he said slowly. So we have 3 days to repair your ship enough to escape. And we need to prepare for assassins who might show up before we're ready. He looked at Hirin. Can you fight them? If my ship were fully operational, yes. 3 enemy vessels would not be a significant threat to a royal cruiser. She gestured at the damaged systems around them. But in this condition, we would lose badly. Then we make sure your ship is ready in time, Taewon said with more confidence than he felt. I'll help you with the repairs. Between your knowledge of the systems and my ability to improvise, maybe we can do it. Hirin studied him for a long moment. You are not what I expected from a primitive species. Most beings would be begging for mercy or offering to betray me to save themselves. I'm not most beings, Taewon replied.
And I really hate the word primitive. This time when Hirin smiled, it was not mocking.
It was genuine and warm. Very well, mechanic. We have an alliance. Help me repair my ship and I will pay you more than 50,000 credits. She paused. I will pay you in knowledge. I will teach you how Yongari technology works. Taewon's eyes went wide. That was worth more than any amount of money. Access to alien technology that advanced could change everything for humanity. It could help his species catch up to the older races that dominated the galaxy. Deal, he said immediately, sticking out his hand. Hirin looked at his hand, confused. Taewon realized that handshakes might not be a universal custom. It's how humans seal agreements, he explained. You grasp hands and shake. Hirin reached out carefully and took his hand. Her scales were warm and smooth, and her grip was strong enough to crush bones if she wanted. But she was gentle, and when they shook hands, Taewon felt like something important had just happened. an agreement between species, a partnership between a queen and a mechanic. We should begin immediately, Hiren said, releasing his hand. I will need tools and materials. What resources do you have at your station? Taewon thought about his modest workshop, full of spare parts and salvaged equipment. I have a lot of random stuff. Mining equipment, old ship parts, metal scraps, welding gear. It's not fancy, but I can usually find what I need. Then let us see what can be done with your random stuff, Hiren said. If you can stabilize a dying quantum core with copper wire, perhaps you can help me rebuild a damaged jump drive with mining equipment. They left the ship together, walking out into the desert where the storm had finally died down. The twin moons of the planet were rising, casting silver light across the red sand. Taewon's rover sat nearby, gutted and broken from all the parts he had sacrificed. I'm going to need a new rover, he muttered. Hiren looked at the damaged vehicle and then at him. I will ensure you receive 10 new rovers. Better ones, she paused. Thank you, Taewon. You saved my life tonight. That is a debt I do not take lightly. It was the first time she had used his name, and hearing it in her musical voice made him feel strange. Good strange, but strange. You're welcome, he said simply. Now let's make sure we both survive the next 3 days. The first full day of repairs taught both of them that working together would be harder than expected. Hiren understood her ship's systems perfectly, but she explained them in terms that made no sense to Taewon. She talked about dimensional, harmonics and quantum field resonance and energy, states that existed in 17 different layers of reality at once. Taewon understood torque and pressure and electrical current. He knew how to make metal bend and engines start and power flow from point A to point B. They spent the morning frustrated with each other, speaking different languages even though the translator handled the words. Finally, Taewon stopped Hiren in the middle of an explanation about subspace field generators. Okay, stop, just stop. He rubbed his face tiredly. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. What does this thing do in simple terms? Hiren looked offended for a moment, then thoughtful. It creates a bubble around the ship that removes us from normal space so we can travel faster than light. Good, that's good. So it's like an engine that moves the bubble instead of the ship. That is, extremely simplified, but yes. Great. So why is it broken? Hiren examined the system again with new perspective. The bubble generator has cracks. It is leaking energy into normal space instead of containing it. So we need to seal the cracks. Taewon grinned. I can work with that. I'm amazing at sealing cracks. They established a new pattern. Hiren would explain what needed to happen in simple terms, and Taewon would figure out how to make it happen with the materials they had. It was messy and improvised, and would probably horrify any proper Yongari engineer, but it worked. By the second day, they had developed a rhythm. Hiren would describe the energy flows and what the systems should be doing. Taewon would translate that into practical mechanical steps. She began to understand human problem-solving, and he began to grasp the basics of Yongari technology. They worked well past sunset, taking breaks only when exhaustion forced them to stop. During one break, they sat on the sand outside the ship, drinking water and looking at the stars. Your species is strange, Hiren said suddenly. You have only been in space for a few centuries, yet you have spread across dozens of worlds. Other young species stay close to their home planet for thousands of years. Taewon shrugged. Humans are good at spreading out. We're stubborn and curious, and we don't like being told what we can't do. He smiled. We even have a saying for it. HFY, humanity. Fuck yeah. Hiren's translator struggled with the phrase, and she tilted her head in confusion. What does this mean? It means we might not be the strongest, or the smartest, or the fastest, Taewon explained. But we don't give up. We find a way. We survive. We look at impossible situations and say, watch me do it anyway. He gestured at her ship, like fixing a quantum power core with spare parts. It's stupid and shouldn't work, but we try anyway. Hiren was quiet for a moment, considering this. That philosophy is both admirable and terrifying. You attempt things without knowing if they will work. Sometimes the only way to learn is by trying, Taewon said. Haven't you ever done something impossible just to see if you could? No, Hiren admitted. I am Yongari. We plan, We calculate. We only act when success is certain. She looked at her damaged ship. Perhaps that is a weakness. I was certain my secret mission was safe. I calculated all the risks. And yet I was still ambushed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Taiwan asked the question that had been bothering him. Why were you traveling alone? You're a queen. Shouldn't you have guards and warships and people protecting you? Hyarin's expression became distant and sad. I have all of those things. I have servants and soldiers and subjects who would die for me without question, but I have no equals. No one sees me as a person. They see the Dragon Queen, the symbol, the ruler. She looked at him. You are the first being in 3 centuries who has treated me like a regular person. You're not regular, Taewon said honestly. You're impressive and terrifying and way smarter than me. But yeah, you're still a person. Being royal doesn't change that. It changes everything, Hyarin said softly. I have lived for over 2,000 years. I have ruled for 800 of those years. In all that time, I have never had someone I could simply talk to without politics or formality or fear. She paused. I was traveling alone because sometimes I just need to escape the weight of the crown. Taewon understood that feeling better than she knew. I left the military because I couldn't handle the weight anymore. They wanted me to do something that went against everything I believed in. What did they ask you to do? Taewon was quiet for a long moment. He had never told anyone this story before. We were at war with another species over a border dispute. Nothing important, just politics and pride. Command ordered me to sabotage some civilian transport ships and make it look like the enemy did it. They wanted to turn public opinion against them. Did you obey? No. I refused, told them I wouldn't kill innocent people for a political game. Taewon laughed bitterly. They dishonorably discharged me, took away my rank, my reputation, everything. I came out here to the desert because no one else would hire me. Yirin looked at him with new respect. You sacrificed your position for your principles. That takes great strength. Or great stupidity, Taewon muttered. I've been alone out here for 5 years. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. You did, Hyarin said firmly. A person who will not compromise their ethics for convenience is rare and valuable. She smiled slightly. Perhaps that is why you can work with me. We are both exiles in our own way, both carrying burdens that no one else understands. They talked late into the night, sharing stories about their lives. Hyarin described her empire, worlds of crystal cities and energy beings and technology that seemed like magic. She talked about ruling billions of subjects across dozens of star systems, making decisions that affected entire civilizations. Taewon told her about Earth, the blue planet where humans evolved. He described cities built of steel and glass, oceans full of life, and the simple pleasures of rain and seasons. He talked about growing up poor but curious, learning to fix things because his family could not afford to buy new ones. As the twin moons reached their peak, Hyarin's sensors chimed a warning. She checked the data and her expression became grim. Ships are approaching. 3 vessels, moving fast. She stood quickly. The assassins have returned. We still need another full day of repairs before the ship can jump to hyperspace. Taewon felt fear spike through him, but he pushed it down. Panic would not help. He needed to think clearly. Can your ship fight at all? He asked. Some weapons are functional, but the shields are weak and mobility is limited. In a direct fight, we would lose. Then we don't fight directly. Taewon's mind was racing, thinking through possibilities. We use the terrain, set a trap, make them think we're weaker than we are. You want to fight 3 military vessels with 1 damaged ship and no training, Hyarin said flatly. I want to survive, Taewon corrected. And I have an idea. It's crazy and stupid and probably won't work, but it's better than sitting here waiting to die. Yirin looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. It was fierce and wild, showing sharp teeth. Tell me this crazy human plan. Taewon explained his idea rapidly. They would use his station's mining explosives to create a defensive perimeter. The charges were designed to crack rock in controlled demolitions, but they could damage light armor on ships. He could scatter them across the desert and rig them to detonate remotely. His sensor array was designed to detect mining operations, but he could modify it to create false readings, make it look like there were multiple ships in the area instead of just one. Hyarin could position her ship in the canyon near his station, using the rock walls as cover. The canyon would limit the assassin's movement and force them to come at her from predictable angles. "It is a terrible plan," Hyarin said when he finished. "I know. We will probably die. Probably. But it is better than doing nothing." Hyarin extended her hand in the human gesture he had taught her. "Partners?" Taewon gripped her hand firmly. "Partners." They had 6 hours to prepare for a battle against professional killers in military warships. 6 hours to set a trap that would either save them or get them killed. Taewon looked at the stars where the assassins were approaching and felt a strange calm settle over him. He had spent 5 years alone in this desert, hiding from his past and his failures. Maybe it was time to stop hiding and start fighting again. "Let's show these assassins what humans can do," he said. Hyarin's smile was sharp and eager. "Yes. Let us show them why you never underestimate a species that refuses to give up." Oh. They worked through the night with desperate speed. Taewon loaded every mining charge he owned into a cargo hauler and drove them across the desert, placing them in careful positions around the canyon. Each charge was designed to break rock, packed with enough explosive to crack a boulder in half. He had 37 charges total, which seemed like a lot until he remembered they were fighting starships. Hyarin repositioned her damaged vessel deeper into the canyon, where the narrow rock walls would provide some protection. The ship's weapons were partially functional, enough to hurt an enemy if she could get a clear shot. But the shields were weak, maybe strong enough to stop 1 or 2 hits before failing completely. While Hyarin worked on restoring as many weapon systems as possible, Taewon modified his station's sensor array. He programmed it to project false signals, making it look like multiple ships were powered down in the area. It was a basic trick, but it might buy them a few precious seconds of confusion. With 2 hours left before the assassins arrived, Taewon rigged remote detonators to all the mining charges. He set them to different frequencies so he could trigger them individually or all at once. His hand shook slightly as he worked, and he had to stop twice to calm his breathing. He was terrified. He would not pretend otherwise. But fear did not mean giving up. It just meant he had to work through it. Hyarin found him making final adjustments to the detonator controls. She looked exhausted, scales dulled from stress and lack of rest, but her eyes were still fierce and determined. "The weapons are ready," she reported. "I have primary cannons and 6 missile pods functional. Not enough to destroy 3 military vessels, but enough to hurt them." "Good. That's good." Taewon showed her the detonator. "I have 37 charges placed in a semicircle around your position. When they come in, I'll wait until they're committed to the approach, then start triggering them." "Where will you be during the fight?" "In my station, watching the sensors and triggering charges. I can coordinate the defense from there." Hyarin frowned. "Your station has no shields, no armor. If they target it, you will die." "Probably," Taewon admitted. "But I need to be there to work the sensors and detonators. Besides, if your ship goes down, I'm dead anyway. Might as well be useful." Hyarin reached out and gripped his shoulder. Her touch was warm and strong. "You are the strangest and bravest human I have ever met." "I'm the only human you've ever met," Taewon pointed out. "My point stands." She released him. "Try to survive, mechanic. I would be disappointed to lose you now." "Same to you, Your Majesty." They returned to their positions. Taewon settled into his station's control room, surrounded by screens showing sensor data and camera feeds. Hyarin climbed into her ship's command throne, ready to fight. The assassins arrived exactly on schedule. 3 sleek warships dropped out of hyperspace above the desert, moving in tight formation. They were Yongari vessels, smaller than Hyarin's royal ship but built specifically for combat. Fast, deadly, and crewed by professionals. Taewon's sensors picked up their communication channel, and his translator worked to make sense of it. A male voice, cold and arrogant, broadcast across all frequencies. "Queen Hyarin, this is Jaehwan of the Mountain Clan. Your reign ends today. Surrender and I will make your death quick." Hirin's response was broadcast just as clearly. Jae-hwan, you are a traitor and a coward. Come and try to take my throne. I will show you why the Dragon Queens do not surrender. Jae-hwan laughed, and it was an ugly sound. You are alone and damaged. We will enjoy watching you burn. The three warships began their descent, spreading out to surround the canyon. They were being cautious, scanning for threats. Taewon held his breath, watching his false sensor signals. Would they fall for it? One of the enemy ships veered off suddenly, chasing a phantom signal. The pilot thought he detected another vessel hiding behind a dune. Good. The trick was working. But the other two ships continued their approach, weapons charging. Taewon could see energy building in their primary cannons. They were preparing to fire on Hirin's position. They're lining up for attack runs, Taewon said over the communication link. 15 seconds until they're in range. Understood, Hirin replied, her voice calm. Let them come. The lead assassin ship dove toward the canyon, moving fast. The pilot was skilled, keeping his vessel dancing to avoid being an easy target. But he was focused on Hirin's ship and did not notice the small objects scattered across the desert floor. Taewon waited until the assassin was fully committed to his attack run. Then he triggered 3 mining charges directly in the ship's path. The charges exploded in sequence, throwing sand and rock and fire into the air. The assassin ship flew right into the blast zone. The explosions were not strong enough to destroy the vessel, but they hammered the shields and sent the ship tumbling off course. Now, Taewon shouted. Hirin's ship lit up with weapon fire. Energy beams lanced out from the canyon, punching through the assassin's weakened shields. The enemy ship's hull cracked and atmosphere vented into space. It tried to pull up to escape, but Hirin fired a missile that tracked it perfectly. The explosion was bright and final, 1 down. 2 to go. The remaining assassins immediately changed tactics. They stopped being cautious and aggressive. Now they were careful and angry. The second ship climbed high, trying to get above the canyon where Hirin could not shoot it easily. The third ship, the one that had been chasing false signals, came racing back to join the fight. Jae-hwan's voice crackled over the communication channel, no longer arrogant. You have help. Who dares aid a dead queen? Someone who refuses to let bullies win, Taewon muttered, triggering more charges. The second assassin ship started bombing the canyon from high altitude, trying to collapse the rock walls and bury Hirin. Explosions rocked the desert, sending up plumes of dust and debris. Taewon watched helplessly as the canyon began to crumble. Then the third ship located his station and opened fire. The first shot missed, turning sand into glass. The second shot clipped the edge of his building, and the entire structure shook. Alarms screamed warnings. Systems started failing. Taewon grabbed the detonator control and ran for the door. The third shot hit directly, and the world became fire and noise and pain. Taewon woke up on his back in the sand, ears ringing and head pounding. His station was burning behind him. He could not remember getting outside, could not remember anything after the explosion. His left arm hurt badly, and when he looked down, he saw blood soaking through his suit. But he was alive, and he still had the detonator. Through the smoke and flames, he saw the third assassin ship coming around for another pass. It was going to finish him off. Taewon tried to stand, but his legs would not cooperate. Then Hirin's voice cut through the chaos. Hold on, mechanic. I am coming. Her ship rose from the canyon like an avenging angel, damaged and burning, but still dangerous. The second assassin was still above, still dropping bombs. Hirin ignored it and focused on the ship threatening Taewon. The two vessels met in a brutal exchange of fire. Energy beams crossed in the air, shields flared and died, and armor cracked under the assault. Hirin's ship took terrible damage, but she kept firing, kept pushing forward, protecting Taewon with her own hull. The assassin ship broke off, trailing smoke, but Hirin did not let it escape. She pursued, weapons blazing, until the enemy vessel exploded in a ball of flame. 2 down, 1 to go. But now Jae-hwan's ship, the one that had been bombing from above, had a clear shot at Hirin's damaged vessel. Taewon watched in horror as the enemy weapons charged for a killing blow. Hirin's ship could not take another hit. The shields were gone. The hull was breached. One more good shot would destroy her. Taewon looked at the detonator in his hand. He still had 12 charges left scattered around the area. He could not trigger them accurately without the sensor data from his destroyed station, but maybe he did not need to be accurate. Hirin, can your jump drive work at all? He asked desperately. It can perform 1 short jump, but it will destroy the drive completely. Why? Can you jump directly behind that last ship? There was a pause. That would be incredibly dangerous. The calculations would need to be perfect, or I will materialize inside a rock or in pieces across the desert. Can you do it? Another pause. Then Hyarin laughed, wild and fierce. You are insane. I like it. Do it. Hyarin's ship shimmered and vanished, and space itself seemed to scream at the violence of the short-range jump. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then Hyarin's ship appeared directly behind Jae-Hwan's vessel, so close they were almost touching. Jae-Hwan had no time to react, no time to evade. Hyarin unleashed everything she had left. Every weapon, every missile, every ounce of power her dying ship could generate. Jae-Hwan's ship came apart like paper in fire. The explosion lit up the desert like a second sun. The battle was over. They had won. Tae-Wan lay back in the sand, laughing and crying at the same time. They had fought 3 military warships with mining charges and 1 damaged royal cruiser. It was the stupidest thing he had ever done. And it had worked. Tae-Wan spent 3 days in the medical pod inside Hyarin's ship. The Yongari healing technology was incredible, knitting broken bones and repairing torn tissue while he slept. By the 4th day, he felt almost normal again, aside from some lingering soreness and a spectacular collection of bruises. Hyarin's ship, on the other hand, looked terrible. The jump drive was completely dead, melted from the inside by the emergency microjump. The hull had dozens of breaches. Half the systems were offline. But it was stable and safe, and that was enough. While Tae-Wan recovered, Hyarin worked on repairing the communication systems. On the 5th day, she finally established contact with her fleet. Within hours, the sky above the desert filled with warships. Tae-Wan watched from the ground as 12 massive Yongari vessels descended, each one large enough to carry thousands of crew. They were beautiful and terrifying, covered in the same organic-looking metal as Hyarin's ship, but on a scale that made his mind struggle to process their size. The sudden appearance of an alien battle fleet sent the human colony into complete panic. Emergency broadcasts filled every channel. Defense forces scrambled. People fled cities in terror, certain that an invasion had begun. Hyarin immediately broadcast a message on all human frequencies, speaking calmly and clearly. People of this world, I am Queen Hyarin of the Yongari Empire. My fleet is here peacefully. We mean you no harm. One of your people saved my life, and I am here to honor that debt. Her voice became hard and dangerous. Anyone who attempts to harm the human settlement or the mechanic named Tae-Wan will answer to me personally. The panic did not completely disappear, but it lessened. Having an alien queen promise protection was better than thinking an invasion was happening. A small shuttle landed near Taiwan's destroyed station, and 3 Yongari emerged. 2 were guards, massive and armored, carrying weapons that crackled with energy. The 3rd was a female Yongari with deep blue scales and intelligent eyes. She wore intricate armor that marked her as someone important. The blue-scaled Yongari approached Hyarin and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, we feared you were dead. When your beacon failed and you did not arrive at the diplomatic summit, we searched everywhere. She looked around at the destroyed ships and blasted landscape. What happened here? An assassination attempt by Jae-Hwan of the Mountain Clan. Hyarin replied calmly. He and his followers are dead. The threat has been eliminated. The blue-scaled Yongari's eyes went wide. You fought 3 military vessels alone? How did you survive? Hyarin gestured at Tae-Wan. Admiral Bora, meet Tae-Wan, the human mechanic who saved my life. He repaired my dying ship, helped me prepare defenses, and fought beside me against Jae-Hwan's forces. Bora turned to look at Tae-Wan, and her expression was pure shock. She studied him like he was a creature from a myth, something that should not exist. A human, she said slowly. A primitive species with basic technology fought Yongari assassins. I really hate that word, Tae-Wan muttered. Primitive, Hyarin laughed. You should see what he did to my quantum core, Bora. Copper wire and a cooling unit from a ground vehicle. It should not have worked, but he made it work anyway. Bora looked between them, clearly trying to process this information. Your Majesty, you are covered in grease and dust. You are working on repairs manually. I have never seen you like this. Perhaps you should see me like this more often, Hyarin said with a smile. It has been educational. Over the next week, Hyarin's fleet engineers descended on her damaged ship and began proper repairs. They brought proper parts, proper tools, and proper procedures. Tae-Wan watched them work with fascination. asking questions constantly and taking mental notes on everything he saw. The Yongari engineers were initially dismissive of the human, treating him like a curious child. Then they examined his improvised repairs and their attitudes changed to confusion, then respect, then amazement. What he had done should have been impossible, yet it had worked. One evening, Taewon and Hye-rin sat outside his destroyed station, watching the sun set over the red desert. The repairs to her ship were nearly complete. Soon she would leave, returning to her empire and her responsibilities. "I have been thinking," Hye-rin said carefully, "about what happens next." "You go back to being queen," Taewon said. "Rule your empire. Do important royal things, and I rebuild my station and go back to fixing mining equipment. That is one possibility." Hye-rin turned to look at him. "Or you could come with me." Taewon's heart skipped a beat. "What?" "I want you to join me as royal engineer. You would have access to all Yongari technology, unlimited resources, and a position of tremendous power and prestige." She paused. "You would be the first human ever honored in the Yongari Empire." It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Everything Taewon had ever wanted. Access to technology beyond imagination, wealth beyond measure, and a place beside one of the galaxy's most powerful beings. But as he looked at the desert, at his destroyed station, at the simple life he had built here, he felt doubt creeping in. "It's an amazing offer," he said slowly, "but I don't think I'm royal engineer material. I'm just a mechanic who likes fixing things. You are more than that and you know it. Maybe." Taewon thought about humanity, struggling to survive in a galaxy full of older and more powerful species. He thought about everything he had learned from Hye-rin, all the knowledge he had gained about alien technology. That knowledge could help his people. "Can I make a counteroffer?" Hye-rin raised one scaled eyebrow. "You wish to negotiate with a queen?" "I wish to negotiate with a friend," Taewon corrected gently. "How about an exchange program instead? Yongari engineers come here to learn from humans, learn about our adaptability, our improvisation, our ability to make things work with limited resources. And humans come to your empire to learn Yongari technology." Hye-rin was quiet for a long moment. "A partnership between species. Not servitude or charity, but genuine exchange." "Exactly. Both sides teaching and learning from each other. No one has ever suggested such a thing to me before. Most species that meet the Yongari either worship us or fear us. None have offered partnership." "Then maybe it's time someone did," Taewon said. Hye-rin smiled, and it was genuine and warm. "Very well. I agree to your exchange program. But with one condition." "What condition?" "You must serve as the human liaison. You will travel between our worlds, teaching our engineers about human methods and learning more about Yongari technology yourself." She paused. "You will not be bound to my court, but we will work together regularly." Taewon considered this. It meant leaving the desert, traveling to alien worlds, meeting strange species. It meant stepping out of his comfortable isolation and engaging with the galaxy again. It also meant staying connected to Hye-rin, to the most interesting and impressive person he had ever met. "I have one demand," he said. "Name it." "If I'm going to be traveling the galaxy in your ships, they need to have proper coffee makers. Real coffee, not synthesized garbage." Hye-rin laughed, bright and joyful. "I will ensure every ship in my fleet has the finest human coffee preparation equipment. You have my royal word." They shook hands on it, the formal human gesture that had become their personal ritual, her warm, scaled hand gripping his smaller human one, sealing an agreement that would change both their species. The next day, Hye-rin's ship was fully repaired and ready to depart. Her fleet had assembled in orbit, waiting for their queen's return. The human colony watched nervously as the alien vessels prepared to leave. Hye-rin and Taewon stood beside her ship one last time, saying goodbye. "I will return in 3 months," Hye-rin said. "That will give you time to recruit human engineers for the exchange program and prepare facilities for Yongari visitors." "I'll be ready," Taewon promised. "Try not to get shot down again while you're gone. Try not to blow anything up while I am away. No promises. You know how humans are." Hye-rin reached out and gripped his shoulder affectionately. "Thank you, Taewon, for saving my life, for fighting beside me, for treating me like a person instead of a symbol." Her voice became softer. "For reminding me what friendship feels like." "Thank you for the same," Taewon replied. and for showing me that the galaxy is bigger and stranger than I imagined, that there's still room out here for people like me. They stood there for a moment, neither wanting to be the first to leave. Then Hirin smiled and stepped back. Until next time, mechanic. Until next time, Your Majesty. Hirin boarded her ship and the ramp closed behind her. The vessel rose smoothly into the air, joining the fleet in orbit. Taewon watched as the massive warships aligned themselves and opened jump portals, tearing holes in reality itself. One by one, the Yongari ships vanished into hyperspace until only empty sky remained. Taewon stood alone in the desert, but for the first time in years he did not feel lonely. His station was destroyed, but he had plans to rebuild it bigger and better. His isolation was over, replaced with purpose and partnership. Most importantly, he had made a friend. A real friend who saw him for who he was, not what he had been or what others expected him to be. Taewon headed back toward the remains of his station, already making plans. He needed to contact the human government about the exchange program. He needed to recruit engineers who would not panic at the sight of aliens. He needed to start learning Yongari language properly instead of relying on translators. He had 3 months to prepare for Hirin's return, and he intended to make the most of them. In the distance, the desert wind blew across the red sand, and the twin moons began to rise. Taewon looked up at the stars and smiled. The galaxy was full of wonders and dangers, ancient empires and impossible technology. Somewhere out there, a dragon queen was returning to her throne, carrying stories of a stubborn human mechanic who refused to give up. And here on this desert planet, that mechanic was preparing to help bridge the gap between species, proving that partnership was stronger than hierarchy, that friendship could cross any divide, and that sometimes the most unlikely meetings led to the most extraordinary changes. Taewon went back to work, whistling an old Earth song, and for the first time in 5 years he felt truly happy.